Last year's Avengers Infinity War ended on a truly surprising and solemn note, as Thanos used the Infinity Stones to turn half of all life in the universe to dust. The Decimation, as the event is now known in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, was carried out with a mere snap of the Mad Titan's large purple fingers. It's largely expected that the prune-chinned villain's actions will be undone in this year's Avengers Endgame, but this theory suggests otherwise. Let's get into it! As we mentioned in our introduction, MCU fans already seem to have decided that the Decimation will be undone in Avengers Endgame. In fact, there seems to be an obsession with the theory. The general thought is that the surviving heroes of the franchise will travel through time, collecting the Infinity Stones before Thanos ever gets a chance to do so, in order to either prevent the events of Avengers Infinity War or use the power of the Infinity Stones to reverse them. However, we have a counter theory to that possibility, and it's based on the idea that Thanos didn't actually erase 50% of the MCU's inhabitants at all, but that he actually created an alternate universe that he then sent the dusted 50% to, where the children born know nothing but full bellies and clear skies. Doesn't that sound wonderful? Oh, Thanos, you and your large purple Bruce Willis head are so generous and thoughtful. Moreover, the theory further suggests that this new universe is the one the MCU will focus on going forward, with the old universe, the one filled with the survivors of the Decimation, actually being the one that gets left behind one way or another. It makes a lot of sense, too. Think about it. Everyone who got dusted is strongly implied to still be alive moving forward in the MCU. Spider-Man, Doctor Strange, Black Panther, and the Guardians of the Galaxy, 4 of whom fell victim to the Decimation, are all getting new movies. Scarlet Witch is getting a TV series, Nick Fury and Maria Hill are definitely in Spider-Man Far From Home, Sam Wilson and Bucky Barnes are both strong candidates to take on the Captain America mantle, and we've barely seen anything of the Wasp, a character with a lot of potential in the franchise, so it's hard to see her being killed off permanently. Meanwhile, pretty much everyone who survived the Decimation has a more uncertain future in the franchise. The likes of Tony Stark, Steve Rogers, Thor, and the Hulk have all had a good run, having first appeared in 2008 and 2011 respectively, and are all expected to exit the franchise soon, some more so than others, with Robert Downey Jr. and Chris Evans coming to the end of their contracts after Endgame, for example. And while it would be sad to no longer see them on the big screen, it wouldn't be a surprise at all to most of us. Essentially, what we're saying is that a lot of the new guys got snapped, while most of the veterans were left behind, and that's potentially important. Should the Decimation end up being undone, the MCU would still be left with a bunch of headlining superheroes all fighting for audiences' attention, sitting poised and ready to launch into action to save the day again. And it would be a lot to fit in, if indeed they were all to see further action going forward. There are only so many movies any studio can put out each year, even one as prolific and popular as Marvel Studios. That could become a problem for them, based on the future planned movie schedule. It would mean the studio would either have to kill them off relatively quickly afterwards, or explain why every major surviving character becomes retired after Endgame's credits roll, something even the most talented writers and directors would find difficult to convincingly achieve. With that in mind, the plot of Avengers Endgame could be a lot different to what we're expecting. What if one of these two things happen? 1. The characters who survive the Decimation sacrifice their universe to save the other one, enabling it to become the new focus of the MCU going forward. Or 2. The characters who survive the Decimation succeed in defeating Thanos, but only end up ensuring that the Infinity Stones can never be used again, so the two separate universes remain split. Both are intriguing prospects, and they would each come with reasons to both jump for joy and bawl our eyes out. If the sacrifice theory turns out to be true, the franchise has already given us multiple reasons why those who sacrifice themselves are prepared to do so. Tony Stark will save Peter Parker, who is essentially his pseudo-son in the MCU. Rocket will save Groot, whose last words before dusting were to call him Dad, in his own Grootish way. Steve Rogers will save Bucky Barnes and Sam Wilson, his two best buddies. Okoye and M'Baku will save T'Challa, as they will serve their king until their dying moments. Clint Barton will save his family, who will keep his bloodline and legacy intact, and Natasha Romanoff will officially wipe wipe all the red from her ledger by sacrificing herself to save trillions and trillions of people. It all makes a lot of sense. But what could either of these outcomes mean for the MCU going forward, I hear you ask? Well, potentially quite a lot, now that you mention it. Let's start with the fact that Marvel loves the idea of multiverses. Comic book history tells us that, and if you're not aware of the concept, it's a hypothetical group of multiple universes, including the universe in which the MCU characters live. And the quantum realm supposedly connects them all, so there's every chance we might get a crossover with or from a different movie franchise at some point in the future, assuming a deal can be agreed between two different studios for such a thing to happen. Just imagine when comic book movies have nowhere else to go and can't possibly outdo what's already come before them, the multiverse concept allows Marvel and DC to come to a deal that would see the Avengers and Justice League meet in live action on the big screen. Just imagine! Having the quantum realm as that universal hub also explains why Ant-Man and Captain Marvel could still end up in the new universe, in spite of the fact that they're clearly in Avengers Endgame alongside the MCU's old guard, as they can both travel there, Ant-Man by using Hank Pym's quantum tunnel, and Captain Marvel by using her own amazing, incredible powers. It also gives Marvel Studios an incredibly easy method of introducing characters like Deadpool, the X-Men, and Fantastic Four. Once Disney's purchase of Fox is completed, those characters may only exist in the new universe, rather than the old one. This scenario would also provide Marvel Studios with a great opportunity to produce a brand new batch of origin stories for core character replacements. For example, She-Hulk could become the new Hulk equivalent. Bucky Barnes or Sam Wilson could become the new Captain America. Harley Keener or Riri Williams could become the new Iron Man equivalent. Nova or Beta Ray Bill could take Thor's role, and a character like Cosmo the Space Dog could replace Rocket in the Guardians of the Galaxy. It's a scenario that would also provide fans with closure in regards to the original Avengers, but with the possibility of not having to kill them all off to achieve it. Seriously, what could be more heroic, and also appropriate as far as their legacies are concerned, than the characters winning and surviving their confrontation with Thanos, then subsequently making the decision to let every major character live, but just separated from each other. Moreover, it would also mean that Doctor Strange totally kept his word. You know, when he said that he'd be prepared to sacrifice anyone rather than give up his Infinity Stone, because he'll probably end up getting it back, and Tony Stark will indeed be dead, at least in the universe that Doctor Strange ends up in. Although he would be kind of a huge jerk for seeing this end result and not telling anybody. The only characters who might know the fate of the original universe would potentially be Ant-Man, Captain Marvel, and Doctor Strange, and they'd likely keep it a secret at the request of those left behind, because having Tony Stark and Steve Rogers saying, "Make sure you tell them what we did," would kind of take away from the heroism. Sadly, it would also mean that Loki and Heimdall would remain dead and be gone for good, unless of course Loki has been tricking us again regarding his death in Avengers Infinity War. Gamora's fate would be less cut and dry, because although she wasn't a victim of the Decimation, there's always the chance that some soul world, Deus Ex Machina hokery pokery, could ensure she's revived. But like with any theory, there's every chance this one will turn out to be absolute nonsense, and there is definitely reason to believe it won't end up happening at all. The first reason is a simple one. There's been no hint on Marvel Studios' part that Thanos' actions created a new universe. Granted, if there had been, it would defeat the object of surprising audiences, but we have to imagine that if something that big was going to happen, it would have been leaked, or at least been hinted at by now. But there's also the fact that while we're fully expecting at least one of Tony Stark, Steve Rogers, or Thor to exit the MCU, can we realistically expect to see all three of them, plus Bruce Banner, Natasha Romanoff, Clint Barton, James Rhodes, Nebula Okoye, M'Baku, Rocket, and other supposed survivors like Valkyrie, Korg, and Meek all exiting the franchise permanently at the same time? Surely not. It would make no sense at all. At most, we might see the 6 original Avengers, Tony Stark, Steve Rogers, Thor, Bruce Banner, Natasha Romanoff, and Clint Barton, sacrificing themselves to save everyone, which would be tough enough for fans to take on its own, but would make sense from a narrative standpoint. But the entire original universe being left behind with 50% of its population still in it? Probably not. Another reason why this theory doesn't make a whole lot of sense is the fact that it makes Thanos' motive for executing the Decimation seem ridiculous. The Mad Titan claimed that he was doing it for the benefit of the universe, because there were too many mouths to feed and resources were running out, and that those who survived the Decimation would flourish. But if Thanos can just use the Infinity Stones to create a whole new universe, why wouldn't he just use them to create more resources, rather than killing off trillions and trillions of living beings? existence. It appears as though, while the Infinity Stones can manipulate matter to their wielder's liking, they can only work with matter that currently exists. So, for example, if Thanos was to conjure an object seemingly out of nothing, it would actually be made from matter that existed somewhere else in the universe. Therefore, creating an entirely other universe is out of the question, because it would be using half of the existing universe, and the resources left for the survivors of the Decimation would be exactly the same, proportionately as they were originally, and nobody, either in the original or new universe, would be better off as a result. However, given that Thanos is clearly a maniac, it could just be that he was using the whole lack of resources motive as an excuse to get his kicks by erasing half of all life. So who knows? Jeez, this is complicated. Hope you guys are managing to keep up. Moving on. Arguably, the most convincing argument against this theory is the fact that a number of the characters who'd be either dead or left behind still have future MCU projects in the works. Black Widow finally has a solo movie on the way. Granted, that could be a prequel, but we can't see that being the case. Scarlet Witch, Vision, and Loki all have TV series on the way, and we really can't see Rocket not being a part of that third Guardians of the Galaxy movie. So, in summation, as cool as this theory is, and while we're fully expecting Avengers Endgame to be an emotional roller coaster that will really tug at our heartstrings long after we've finished watching it, the idea of a character exodus on this level simply seems too much. The fan backlash would be on a scale hitherto undreamt of. Yes, Tony Stark, I did. But seriously, Marvel Studios surely wouldn't deprive us of so many iconic characters in one go. Would they? I guess we'll find out when Avengers Endgame hits theaters around the world at the end of April. What do you think of this theory? Do you believe the snap will, in fact, not get reversed in Avengers Endgame? Let us know your thoughts in the comment section below, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Screen Rant for more great videos just like this one. Catch you later.